So being consistent in the way you talk, even when you get tired of your old ads, just keep using those. Build on top of what you do and don't change, because every time you change, you really lose. Don't reinvent the logo unless it's really bad.
In today's hyper-competitive world, standing out isn't just about great work. It's about how well you market yourself as well as your team. And more so with attention spans shrinking, digital noise being louder than ever, standing out in the right way is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. And who better to guide us through this than Kasper, an award-winning marketer, in-house agency expert, and a chief commercial and creative officer at ZITE. With a career spanning across Apple, Lego, and Musk. Welcome to the show, Kasper.
Thank you for the nice words.
Can you take our audience through your incredible journey so far, and especially your interest in this entire concept of in-house creative teams?
Of course, it started out traditionally like a lot of advertising guys at agencies. So the first 10, 12 years, I was at traditional advertising agencies and I worked with great companies like Lego and Apple and Microsoft and a lot of car brands for some reason. I don't know a lot about cars. And then at one point, I actually got a bit tired of it. I had my own company and I want to do something else. And I just saw an opening of just working with creative side at Maersk, which is a big shipping logistics company. Most people know it, but I'll explain anyway. And the minute I came in, I saw that this was it's very big. It's like 127 markets. It's all over the world. And I just noticed the first week when I was in India, traveling a bit, that we were redoing everything. So some things that were done out of headquarters in Copenhagen or in the US or whatever, one of the bigger markets, was also done in India or Egypt or US. So they did the same campaigns and they were all in English. And it was a lot of waste of time and nobody really knew what was going on. So I suggested my boss that we should take something in and start looking at what we were actually producing so we would have more time to do the great creative work instead of reproducing everything and spend a lot of money on that. And she said, oh, that's a great idea. Can you do that by next month? So, and I'm still naive, but I was very naive at that time. So yeah, of course, how difficult can that be without ever having an idea of the scope of this? So and she said, there are a few people in Manila in our office. You go and see if you could use any of those. So I went and I hired in 10 people. And then we set up a platform where people could submit their briefs and then said, oh, this is probably perfect. I thought I had I needed something to manage everything. Mm-hmm. And then the first Monday when we opened, we got 64 briefs for entire campaigns, creative campaigns with landing pages and email flows and social media. And we were just swamped. So I guess that's how it started. I ended up doing a lot of very boring stuff about mapping out workflows and processes and building a real tool that we could collaborate on and sending proofs and know all that. And then I thought after a couple of years, I need to do something else because it's a very busy day at Maersk. Sunday is a bit slow, but otherwise, I mean, when the market opens in Tokyo and until people go to bed in LA, it's like ongoing business. So I shifted to something completely different, a fintech company doing a trading app, and I said, I'm not going to build an in-house agency again. But then I realized everything was the same. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's probably, I could just copy paste my old processes for how we should do things. So I ended up building an in-house agency there as well. And then I moved on, just copying, pasting and everything was. So, I mean, you don't have to reinvent how you create a social media post, how you get approval done, how you build email flows or banners. It's the creative side of things that's the interesting part. The rest is more or less mechanics or processes. So that actually, when I was done at George Jensen, a jewelry company, again, something completely different, I thought I've got to share this with someone, because when I started out, I had no idea how to do it. But I mean, after almost 10 years, I think I had an idea of how to build this. So I wrote a book, and that's for anyone who want to be an expert in anything. That's the best advice ever. So long story, long. That actually ended up being what we now call ZITE, which is a company that helps companies build, manage, analyze in-house agencies, but also run, which is our main business, run in-house agencies. So we put people on site, basically, and build their in-house agencies and run that with our processes. And the main reason, I need to say this, for doing all this, optimizing and being focused on efficiency, is the creative part. It's not just to do the boring stuff. It is to have time to do great creative stuff. So that's still where my heart is. It's the creative side of things.
Sure, absolutely. So now, moving a little ahead from purely marketing world to linking that to the world of people, leaders, and organizations. We are in a world where attention spans are fragmented into just 8 seconds. That's what I got to know a couple of weeks ago. And research indicates that the advertisements hold consumers' attention only for 1.2 seconds. That's like really nothing, no time at all. And video content often loses its impact in the first 2 seconds. So with this pressure on time and the fact that you have to create an impact in the first 2 or 3 seconds, how do we really think about our marketing campaigns as individuals as well as organizations?
Yeah, I think it's the scary part. I talked with someone running a big ad network, and he said, with money, I can put your ad in front of anyone, but I can only make them stay for 2 seconds. The rest is creativity. And I just saw numbers the other day that, creativity stands out for almost 50% of the impact of anything you do. So it is the idea. And I think one mistake that a lot of companies we talk to is they try to be on every platform. They try to do everything all at once. They try to, do a billion different banners and social media posts, be on TikTok and LinkedIn and, and do different content. And I think it's much easier to just try to cut it down and don't spread yourself too thin. So that's the first thing. What I've seen in the last couple of years, and when I also teach at the Danish School of Advertising, and what I've seen there is really doing something in the real world. Something that stands out. It's 10 years ago, it was the flash mob, but now it's doing something, spectacular in the real world, putting up a statue of a little girl. That's also old story at Wall Street, but doing something. Carlsberg made one big billboard with a tap in the middle of London where you could actually go and get a glass and just have a drink. And that one billboard, I mean, it stood out. People took pictures of that. So do something in the real world, especially now with AI. I mean, anything is possible on a screen now. I can sit here and I can do Game of Thrones CGI from my laptop. So I mean, doing something in the real world is really, I think, is really a trick right now. It's a trend we've been seeing the last couple of years. So. But I think it is really about focusing on the creativity, focusing on that one good idea that people actually, that hook that people will actually, and I will say the relatable thing, instead of just writing everything, just to try to do something that makes people stop and think. So it's, in some sense, it's really old news. It's what I was taught back in the 90s when I went into school. But I think it's actually more true than ever right now, that you need to focus on the creative idea and rather do one great one that people will talk about than try to do everything.
Right. One thing that you mentioned, which really resonated with me, was this mention of the real thing. Do one real thing that people keep on talking about, and that becomes really the way you position yourself. So, can you give me examples of one or two real things, how really organizations or leaders or teams position themselves that, okay, this is the best, we are the best team, I'm the best leader, or this is the best organization, in terms of, so that our audience can understand very well what is this concept of real thing as well as a hook.
So one thing that comes to mind, and it's not really so Specsavers, for instance, the glass company, they've been really good at doing this for a billion years. They also had like the same in-house three guys sitting there since the, I don't know, 80s. But they keep doing this. They keep doing should have gone to Specsavers campaign. They do the billboard in the real world. So one billboard where they put the poster outside the letter and so on. So people forgot they did it wrong. They did last year, I think they did a car on top of, I don't know what they're called. You know, when you have a pedestrian street and you have these blocks that goes up so people won't drive in. And they actually lifted the car by sitting it on top of one of these things. So they had a bus rear end, that's not, where it looks like it was parked into something. So they've been really good at doing these real world things. Another thing that comes to mind in this small Australian beer brand from last year, I saw maybe a year ago, that took one of their small beer trucks and they had a crane lifting it up and putting it down sidewards, upside down actually, between two buildings. And that was all they did. And they just, and the problem with that idea is, I don't really know why, but it made a lot of people stop when they came into, I think, Melbourne or Sydney that morning and just had a car. And people started, how this is not something that happens by a coincidence. How do you get a car upside down? And they took pictures of this, and the whole side of it was basically just a poster for them. So that's an example. It's not the best example because I mean it kind of lacks the relation back to the brand and why.
But still something to make people really stand and see that, okay, this is not the usual that we see. So basically people will take note and click pictures and share that. And any which way, if people are sharing your name or your brand, that is good marketing for you. So at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think the last thing, it's something we really teach at the school is something, and I'm not really sure what it's called. We call it the acting idea. So that's something where instead of doing advertising, it's about helping your customer's customer. So one example we did at George Jensen is, and I told this story a billion times, so excuse me if somebody heard it before, but we realized when, the head of e-com came down on the website and said, people are not clicking, they're not buying rings on our website. It's too Scandinavian, too pale in the design. You need to make the buy button pop up. I said, I'm not sure that's the reason. So we looked at the heat map, the hotjar of how people behaved, and we realized that all, the men that came in, went to the product page, clicked on a ring, went on to that product page, and they clicked buy. So the problem wasn't the buy button. Everybody clicked buy. And then they clicked buy again, and one more time. And then they realized that on top of the buy button, there was this drop down with the ring sizes. And when they clicked on that, you get 13, 15 different ring sizes. I don't know about you, but I have no idea my own ring size and at least not my girlfriend's ring size. So nobody knows the ring size. So what we ended up doing instead was building a small app for the phone, so you could go home and you could steal a ring and put it on the screen, and you could see the size.
Right.
And that's kind of and it's, I mean, we didn't have any money. It wasn't part of the budget to do a campaign or an app. So we just shared it for free on the social media channels, and it just exploded is a big word, but it kind of exploded in our world. And people just say, hey, Thomas, the girlfriend texting her boyfriend or tagging him, said, this is probably something for you, or no excuse anymore, Martin, or whatever. And it's shared like that. So that's one example of an
Right.
acting idea. Can you actually do something that helps people in the real world solving a real problem instead of just doing a fancy poster?
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. 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 Um, no matter what we say, there are some fundamentals like irrespective of the changes in technology, attention span, et cetera, some of the fundamentals like understanding your audience, crafting authentic narrative, maintaining consistent messaging, these are something which remains consistent in marketing, whether we like it or not, irrespective of the ages or the years that has gone by. So, how can organizations really harness these principles to position themselves as organization of choice? So I'm not talking about purely from the products per se anymore, but organization of choice in terms of, we take care of our people, we really help our people grow, we take care of well-being of our people, et cetera, et cetera. So when it comes to these things, what are some of the things that organizations can do, taking from the principles of marketing to position themselves as the employer of choice?
Yeah. So you actually mentioned one of the most interesting things. I just saw a study in the fall, I think, from a company called System One, and they've been testing consistency, which is really it's kind of the boring thing, but it's really one of the things that really works. So being consistent in the way you talk, even when you get tired of your old ads, just keep using those. Build on top of what you do and don't change, because every time you change, you really lose. Don't reinvent the logo unless it's really bad. I mean,
Right,
keep
right,
going. So and on that note, I think bringing in a copywriter or a copy editor, or because I mean, and setting up some kind of AI where you train your own AI on your tone of voice, and you have your own copywriter as the filter, as the editor of this, but they can
right.
actually produce a lot of copy themselves, and they can ensure that consistency in the tone of voice and so on. And I think that's the first thing I would do anywhere if I come in. That's bringing in that, setting up, making sure that everything that goes out on the website and social media
Right.
is consistent.
Right,
So,
right.
and I mean, it's so easy to get bored of what you're doing, but consistency
Exactly.
is really, really key. Um,
Right.
to build on top of something. I mentioned Specsavers earlier. They've been having the same tagline and campaign basically since the 90s at least. And they keep
Right.
rebuilding on that, and it keeps getting better, because it's like audience, they know it's a Specsavers, and says, oh, this is probably brilliant because they used to do brilliant work. So you actually notice their ads, even though it's just boring
Right.
ads,
Right.
formats and so on.
Right. Another thing is that I have been, once I started this podcast, I have been receiving a lot of questions on podcasting. So there are 3 stages of a podcast. One is when you're starting and you're really struggling to get attention. And second is, as you rightly mentioned, you have done some 30, 35 episodes, and now you as a host are getting bored. You don't want to do this anymore, but you know that you have to keep pushing it to go to the third level, right?
Yeah.
And third is when, you have like 500, 600 plus subscribers, you come up in all Google search, etc., etc. So looking at these 3 phases, now purely looking at it from a marketing guru perspective, some inputs for podcasters when they are going through these 3 phases, what would be some of the marketing tips for them? That's stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Here you focus on these things as far as marketing. Second, you focus on these things. Third stage, you focus on these things. Pure play marketing of the podcast.
Yeah. So I don't do a podcast myself, so I'm only guesting. But one of the things that we talk a lot about in other from other industries is being better at reusing your content. So editing, cutting down, taking bits and pieces, and reusing it in other formats. Take out the text and use it as a static post on Instagram. Do reels and so something like that. I think that's one of the things. have to admit I'm really bad at, when we do something, when we do an event, we take a lot of photos, we even have the video, and actually editing that and putting that online and do bits and pieces of that is, I mean, it's so easy because you already got the content, you just need to do it. But that's really one of the things I would say would be the first, low-hanging fruit that you could use. I mean, the next would probably, also, that would be more the design, look and feel, get something that people recognize, building a corporate visual identity. That's a big word around around everything you do. Every time you post something, people say, "Oh, that's this podcast or this." So setting it up more like, I mean, I'm in my living room here, but setting it up more like like a studio or something like that. I mean, it's since it's mostly voice, it doesn't really need that. But but that would be probably also something that takes it to the next level. And it's so easy to do, graphics and everything nowadays. I don't know. That was just my 2 cents from the top of the head.
Absolutely. Also, everything requires a lot of marketing, inherently requires a lot of storytelling, right? So when we are going into the aspect of individuals and leaders marketing themselves in front of the external world, how can we bring about some of the learnings of storytelling to the boardroom or to the conference room?
Yeah, so storytelling I think is really one of the most important things. It really works. I sometimes just say to people, I mean, even though if not related, just start by telling a story when you present something, even if you're presenting a number or something like that. Say, oh, this morning when I was walking my dog, I came up with this, and I thought I got to look at the dashboard and say, is this really, and then people start listening. I was doing the laundry the other day, and so when I start telling something, then people start listening. It connects on a totally different level than showing numbers. So, and one of the tools or principles that we're using, I think this is something people can take home, is building, it's not something I invented. It's building brand pillars. So for instance, at George Jensen, we've found these 3 brand pillars. So one of them was the heritage. This company was founded in 1904 by a Danish silversmith. So talking about the heritage, it had a lot of famous designers doing different designs along the way. The other one would be craftsmanship. We had our own smithy with people who spent 6 months hammering out a big plate or something like that. So talk about the craftsmanship. This is not something that just produced on a machine somewhere in China or whatever. And the last one would be the Scandinavian design tradition. And then we wrote a couple of lines on each, and every time we had to do some kind of content, a presentation. We said all of this. Every time we have to go back and say, is this story about one of these or 2 of these, or preferably, of course, 3 of these? How do we make sure that every time we talk about something, we talk about our heritage, or we talk about our craftsmanship and so on? So try to figure out what are your 2, 3, 4, probably not more than that, brand pillars, things that you can always talk about. Write them down, put them into words, figure out how can you work with this. I would say that's a great way to start your storytelling. Instead, when we, always draw a line back to when we were invented, or when George Jensen himself, did this small design. That's actually the inspiration for what we're doing now. Try to draw that line, or when Maersk, when containerization was first invented, it was really clever because it was like Lego bricks on a ship, so much easier to move things around the world. And, it's one common system. It makes sense. It's something like, talking about these brand pillars makes it so much more interesting when you tell a story than just say,
Right.
Yeah, this is how many ships we have.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think this brand pillars that you mentioned really resonates because It's very easy to understand the concept and also come up with the pillars and then do your strategy of marketing. So, Kasper, if I ask you, any particular leader that you've come across at this point in time? I mean, every leader markets themselves, right? But the way a leader has marketed himself or herself that has really, really impressed you. Is there any particular leader that like that? And what are a couple of things that we can take from that leader, the way he or she has marketed themselves?
I know it's so easy, but I mean, it's so easy to mention someone like Steve Jobs, and I know it's like an old story, but
Right.
he's all about storytelling. Everything
Right.
he does is a story, and he's so well prepared, and he doesn't really talk about, he changed everything from talking about, the megapixels in a camera to
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about having a billion songs in your pocket, or
Yeah.
putting pictures in your head. So I would say he's a great storyteller, and a leader. And when we talk about branding, I think a lot of big brands are actually all about their founders and the way the founder culture talks, or the leader. It's not entirely true, because I did mention Heinz and Coca-Cola before, and I don't really know their origin story, but I think in principle, having a great, leader that actually tells stories about, and there are different kind of stories. There's the founder story. If you're a young company, say, how do we come up with this? How do we do that? Kind of like I did in the beginning. And then you have the product story. How do we
Right.
saw this hole in the market, say, why are everybody doing this in the stupid way? And I mean, I'm also part of a small startup with a couple of other guys in the US, building a tool that helps teachers teach data science and statistics. And I don't really know a lot about this, but it was founded by a guy called Aaron, who used to teach at a university outside Chicago. And he was so tired, and that's his story. He was so tired of every time he had a class, he had to spend the 2 first months on teaching them Excel instead of going in. He was a biology professor. Instead of going in and looking at birds and everything. So he said, why don't we build a tool so it's so easy for students to understand statistics and data and how to play with that? And I think that's a great story. So you need to get that story straight if you're a founder, or if you're solving, anything.
Right. Absolutely. So, nowadays there are a lot of platforms available. And specifically when we are talking about professional stories, lots of people use LinkedIn, but Instagram and YouTube is also becoming extremely popular to discover new products and services, sell, get your additional sets of clients, etc., etc. So which platform works best for self-marketing, team positioning at this point in time? And what are some of the practical tips to maximize impact in these platforms?
I mean, LinkedIn is obviously great. It has such a broad reach, but it also gets a bit humble and not so humble bragging, where you show a lot of things. But what I've seen is really the personal side of things, which is, I mean, something I made a couple of great ads. They didn't perform that well, and then I did something where I do like this, and it performs like
Very, very
crazy.
well. Yeah.
So something personal where you talk and it works really well. Being, giving things away, being, being yourself, and not hiding behind a company and doing, I mean, kind of boring ads, even though or great ads actually. But so, and I think that goes for LinkedIn, for YouTube as well, and Instagram as well. I mean, try to be consistent with your brand, but actually being personal and authentic is also a big word, right?
Right.
So have your experts actually, if you're a software company, say, this is how we do things. This is all the great benefits. And did you know tips and tricks, and all that, and share, instead of doing a big, animation explainer where you don't really understand what's going on,
Right.
then do the more low production content sometimes,
Right.
but be authentic.
Yeah. As much as I'm loving this conversation, I understand we are, finishing on our time. But before I let go of you, one last question. Having worked in companies like Apple, Lego, which are really known for their unique marketing, branding schemes, so what are some of the key lessons that you think that the world can learn from these kind of companies as far as marketing and branding is concerned?
I didn't work at Apple. I worked with Apple, so I was a consultant just to make that. I mean, for both companies, and they're in a way in the same position because they're both very consistent in what they do, but they're still playful and trying things out. So if you're not, you're never in doubt when you see something from Apple, even though they've changed over the time. They keep this playfulness, I think.
Right.
So try out new things, but try to be consistent. I know it's difficult to, but it resonates in my mind.
Right.
So try to be consistent on your tone of voice and the way that you're yourself. Don't change the logo all the time and everything,
Right.
but try to be playful around it. And it goes for Lego as well, building everything from architectural things or flowers or for adults.
Right.
It's still the same, imagine playfulness and inspire universe they build on, to use that word. So I would say, and again, I think it's back to, they probably have, I wouldn't say they're probably not working with brand pillars, but in a way they do everything, every time you do something for Apple, it's about, their engineers, they put a lot of effort, if engineers and designers, into designing products. You don't have to praise them.
Right.
And I think advertising is not about writing, this is amazing, it has to be, do your headline as clever as the
Right.
product. So let the product shine, probably.
Right. Great. Thank you so much. So, as we realized, discussing with Kasper, that marketing isn't just about selling. It's about shaping perspectives, creating value, and building a trust. And in today's constant saturated world, standing out requires more than visibility. It's about knowing your audience, telling authentic stories, and staying consistent to create lasting impacts. Saying that, any last thoughts, Kasper?
Oh, I think you summed it up. I think if you're building something, start with the boring part, map out your processes, because, once you've done that, who's doing what, you have time to do the creative part of it. And it is the creative part of it. So be creative and consistent on top, or creative on top of consistency. I think that's the most important from what I had to say today.
Right.
And trust in creativity, because it is really, what makes you stand out. It's not the being on the platform all the time. It's
Right.
doing something great once in a while.
Right. Just before I go, I'm just trying to be a little more, greedy. So can you define creativity? Because we heard this word quite a number of times today in this conversation. So as per you, what would be the definition of creativity? If I'm trying to be creative for my products, so what does that mean?
Oh, yeah. I think that's a great question. I think creativity, it could be defined in many ways. I think for me, it's about combining things. So it's seeing things in a new way that makes it resonate with you. But it is doing something, something that stands out, something in a unique way. And I think that's why creative is not dying because of AI, because AI will build a sea of sameness. And then you really have to be creative on top of that. So we get better website copy and so on. And AI is definitely getting better. But when everybody's getting better, then you have to be creative. You have to do something that stands out. So that's what creativity means to me. It's like doing something different something that resonates with people.
Right, absolutely.
I've tried to,
Yeah.
that's my best answer.
No, absolutely. And one last question, which you cannot stop myself from asking, is that everybody speaks about AI in the present world, right? Everybody speaks about it. So you're talking about building in-house agencies. So in a world which is driven by AI, is it still a time where marketing professionals should be worried at all? Or is it that how they are going to integrate AI with the way they have been working so far?
So both. I think you should be worried if you're, if you're a copywriter and you don't want to evolve. I think, but if you're a copywriter and you want to move to be more like a copy editor, you know, writing all these things, having, I always say it's difficult to come up with 100 bad ideas in a row. And for me, when I have to come up with an idea, it's just keep going. And with AI, you can get the first 50 ideas. Some of them are really shitty, something I wouldn't have any assistant, saying if
Right.
they were suggesting that, I would say, oh, that's a really bad idea. But sometimes those, really bad ideas, once out of 20 make you think, make you move to the next day. And then I say something stupid, then you say something inspired by that, slightly less stupid, and and that's how we build. So using AI for inspiration, using it for, changing content into different formats, help you edit and rewrite. I mean, I wouldn't be worried as a marketeer. I would jump in and embrace AI and be a better person. But it's not about creating more content, because I think we are drowning in that.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you so much for your last tips, Casper. So, what's your next move? Whether you are leading or building a team, an entrepreneur crafting a brand, or a professional looking for elevating your presence, how you market yourself really, really matters. So, stay tuned for more episodes of Moments That Inspire, where we explore the strategies that drive real impact and success. Thank you.